There's obviously been breaking news in terms of the Alec Baldwin case. I was watching a press conference until a couple of minutes ago, and I actually had to boot the cat off the seat. It's one of the few places the cat gets sort of, what's the word? Not immunity, but sort of a safe haven from the dog. The dog doesn't really know that the cat sits in this chair. So anyway, I had to boot the cat out. How all of you? I see there are quite a few people in. Our members are up to, I think, over 30. Let me just bring up the chat. And maybe I should bring Timmy into this. I see Stephanie's, Timmy, come, do you want to say hello? Timmy, come. Timmy, I think, wants to show off his new haircut. I'm not sure if you guys have seen him, the Senior Holmes version of Timmy. He's sort of got a really short haircut. I've kept his ears long and his tail long and some of his sort of lower legs kind of thing. Let me just see who's here. Bria, good to see you here. Terry Dean, SM Kovalinsky, good to see that you found your way into the whole membership thing. I know you were struggling with that a little bit. Madeline Jimenez, good afternoon. Let's see who else is here. I think I saw Sharon Tuck. And am I missing anyone? Okay, so good to see you guys. Let's just see what... Oh, Stephanie says Timmy looks very handsome. He thinks so. He definitely thinks so. When we went for a walk today, there were like 2 beautiful collie dogs and he just wanted to play with them. So what's the weather like there? It's today was the first day where I felt a little bit cold. Actually, although I'm wearing a collared shirt for the first time, I don't think I've done a single live with a collared shirt on. I'm actually, under my collared shirt, I'm wearing swimming trunks. So I sort of came from the gym not that long ago, and just before diving into the pool, I was like, wow, this is kind of gonna hurt. This is gonna be cold. It's not cold, it's just compared to how hot it's been, it's definitely cooler. Great to see you as well, Madeline. Stephanie says you look very nice in a collared shirt. Well, I don't really want to wear a collared shirt too often because then there's going to be this expectation. So if I wear T-shirts, then I can kind of stick to that casual standard. Just something I want to quickly point out in terms of the press conference that's just happened with Alec Baldwin. Did you guys notice that the lawyers for Helena's family, for the Hutchins family, referred to her as Helena? Did you guys notice that? Terry says we aren't the fashion patrol, thank goodness. And I was sort of, I actually kind of even went and did some research on the pronunciation of Helena, as a sort of Ukrainian name, because I was like, technically, what are we really talking about? And I know Alec Baldwin called her Helena or Helena in that sort of roadside interview. And I thought, if anyone would know, he would know. But then you hear the lawyers of her family calling her Helena. So I thought that was definitely, quite an interesting thing. Again, you would think Alec Baldwin would sort of be sensitive enough to and sort of just know how to pronounce the name of his victim. He would know how to say her name. It's like a co-worker. And so I just thought that was pretty interesting. Happy to have a few lives again. Yeah, I would really like to be working on a video on Alec Baldwin, but I guess it's the difference between YouTube and writing a book is you kind of give yourself a big block of time, and you totally immersed, you totally what's the word? You sort of stew, you marinate in the facts of a particular case. You wake up and you just eat, sleep, and breathe a particular case. Hey, what you doing? Do you want to say something? Hey, do you want to say something? And then, and that really allows you to get really deep, intimately sort of au fait with the facts of a case. And because you eat, sleeping, and breathing one case day after day after day, and you really find all sorts of insights that you wouldn't otherwise find. YouTube, because of this demand for sort of almost like kind of just-in-time news, or like as the news happens, people want to hear your reaction, want to hear your assessment. So 1 minute you immerse in one case, and then you sort of jump out of it into another one, and then jump out of that one into another one. And I'm just saying it tends to create superficial analysis, which I don't really like. I don't know if that makes sense. Sharon says, Stephanie says, I read the 29-page lawsuit. So one thing that sort of stands out is that it sort of targets Alec Baldwin, whereas that lawsuit from the medic specifically, or sort of doesn't target Alec Baldwin. It's like mentions almost everybody. Alec Baldwin is just sort of left out of it. This particular lawsuit, there was actually a really interesting question from one of the lawyers to sort of like to something like, who do you see as the most responsible? And I think they were sort of expecting them to say something specific. And I think, they were kind of trying to draw the conversation towards who is the most responsible. And the lawyer responded to say something about, well, Baldwin was holding the gun when it went off, et cetera, et cetera. But he also then hedged that to say there are other people responsible, and it will be up to the courts and the jury to decide the proportion of kind of responsibility. It's hard to imagine that Alec Baldwin, in a scenario where it goes to trial, where certain things happen at the trial, because of his position as lead actor, as the producer, as the person holding the gun, because of his central role, wouldn't be regarded as more responsible than, say, the scriptwriter or the gaffer kind of thing. You know what I mean? There definitely will be some people more responsible than others. Now, something else I noticed that's quite interesting is there was when you Google Alec Baldwin right now, there's a Fox News article saying something like lawsuit finds Alec Baldwin quote responsible ... and then when you click on that link, it's gone. So either someone contacted them and warned them, or somebody realized that is something that they can't afford to say as a news agency. They can't afford to say at this point Alec Baldwin is responsible, even quote unquote responsible. We kind of at a very sensitive point now where you've got all these lawsuits, and you've got to be careful what you say, because it's got to go to court to decide actual culpability. And there's a difference between what you can prove and what is actually, what kind of happened. It's one thing to say Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger, and that came up in that video, or that something else happened, or we don't know what happened. To prove it might be quite difficult. Thanks for putting up that become a member, Stephanie. Is Robbie Robin here? Okay, so Robbie, I see you've also had a bit of trouble getting in, but at least you've gotten in. Robbie says, I have lots of buffering going on. Well, I don't know. Is anyone else having buffering problems? Maybe you should just either refresh or kind of close everything and then try again. Timmy, can I put you down? Timmy, can I put you down? Okay, so are you guys ready to talk about the Barry Morphy affidavit? I must say that is really interesting reading. And I remember when it came out, I think I put up something like 10 what the F's from the affidavit. And it's really not the kind of affidavit where you can really do that. Having studied the affidavit subsequently, there's so many little things that jump out at you here and there. You sort of read and sort of like, okay. And then something, you notice something and it's like, wow, that is quite significant. And then you sort of read, and then there's something else. It's not really like what's such a shock and awe affidavit, but it does build up its case, I think, quite well. And for those people saying, the prosecution don't have a case or the prosecution are losing, well, the fact that the case is even going to trial, the fact that, Barry is on trial for charged with murder means that somewhere along the line, somebody had to authorize or approve of the case that was presented in this affidavit. And it's a really long affidavit, but it's got some really interesting information. And I don't really want to praise it. I really want to go through the entire affidavit and then sort of focus on the stuff that does stand out. And as we go through this, you will notice, wow, I didn't know that. Wow, that is quite interesting. And it's all these little circumstantial things that on its own you would say, that's not going to win the prosecution the case. But added together, it starts to create kind of a mosaic that is quite difficult to counter in a way, possibly quite difficult to counter. Sim says Timmy wants to be a part of chat. Well, he's sitting at my feet now. By the way, below this picture I've got here, I've actually got a huge blown up landscape of Vincent van Gogh. It's sort of on the ground next to me. And I'll be putting that up for tomorrow's live on the Van Gogh series. I must say the script I wrote today for that was it's not that the script is good, it's that the content that we're dealing with now is really riveting. It's really taking you somewhere anchored on the facts, taking you into the whole true crime machinery, and that I'm quite happy that is happening. Okay, so Bria, you say he's on trial for murder and they don't even have the body. Well, that also happened in Patrick Frazee case, and that was a fairly easy kind of slam dunk case, but partly because his mistress came forward, and if his mistress didn't come forward, it would have been a tough case. But she came forward, and that made things a lot easier. But another case where they didn't find the body was Letitia Stork. She was actually charged before they found the body, and then shortly after that, they did find the body. It's not I think it's a myth. It's kind of a popular myth that there's no body equals no crime kind of thing. But if there's enough circumstantial evidence, if your behavior around the disappearance is suspect enough, then you can put forward quite a good case. Yeah, so Stephanie, that is exactly the thing. You're getting immersed in one case, and then there's breaking news in another one, and that just reduces the depth that you can concentrate on something and get to grips with a particular case. And that is the it's the distraction and the short attention span of the news cycle now lends itself to kind of being superficial, to a shallow knowledge of the cases that we deal with. And I must say, I don't want to go that route. I don't want to, I wasn't very happy with the Brian Laundrie affidavit, the autopsy report video I put up. But, people want to know why I sometimes have problems sleeping. I kind of turned my computer on at midnight to alert my patrons when the next two lives were going to be. And then, half an hour earlier, news had broken about the autopsy report. I think some YouTubers had already put up videos hours earlier. And so it was midnight. I really was tired. I really wanted to go to bed and was like, okay, you're going to have to get this up. And so I ended up going to sleep at 2 a.m. And I must say my sleeping patterns are really being badly shifted around. And, I've entered certain races, a running race on Saturday, obviously early in the morning, a cycling race on Sunday, also early in the morning. Obviously, if you're not getting any sleep, those races are going to be hard to even attend because of this disruption. Anyway, let's get going. Stephanie says, yes, I understand a bit how it is for you. Yeah. Okay, so absolutely disrupted. Okay, so we're going to go to the affidavit. And something that I noticed just at the outset was Barry Morphew didn't tell the cops that he headed west in the wee hours of Mother's Day. His story that he repeated over and over again was that, and he was quite sort of specific. He was like, this was the road that I took to Broomfield. I went this route, and he said it again. I went straight to Broomfield. I went to Broomfield. And then I think it turned out that from the telematics, that he'd actually gone west towards, is it Poncha Springs? And is it Mayfield? But anyway, west, going west. I did put a map in the Patreon section where you could see that map. But what's quite interesting is you could so if you're going straight towards Broomfield, it's sort of north and east, then you could also go west on a kind of the Highway 50, but then there was a kind of looks like maybe a secondary road or something going north, joining, so you could also go up that way. What's quite interesting is the helmet, Suzanne's helmet, was found beside the road on the I-50. And the question kind of arises, when did that helmet get there? Was it there the same day that the bicycle was dropped there, or on another day? So let me ask you a question. What do you think the answer is to that? Do you think the helmet was dropped there the same day as the bicycle, or do you think it was dropped there a few days later? Bear in mind the police only found it, I think, about a week later. What do you guys think? Yeah, laundry distraction too. Jean says another day. Okay, anyone else agree? Stephanie says later. Anyone else got a thought on that? Terry says the helmet was an afterthought. Jean said they would have found it earlier. You could see it from the road. I think that's quite a good point. Madeline says, I think it was dropped there another day. Robbie says later as an afterthought. Bria, what do you think? Estin Kovalinsky says she agrees as well. Bria? Bria around? Okay, so anyway, what I want you to do is, as we go through the affidavit, I want you to bear in mind specifically that question, and then think about the answer that you've given, and we'll address that as we kind of go through it. Okay. I'm just trying to bring up the affidavit, almost there. Looks like my computer is, okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with 6 pages. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a fair bit of reading. Bria says, since he was still talking about the helmet when he was out searching, I think it was on his mind, but he hadn't dumped it yet. Okay, so for all of you have said, I think the helmet was put there later, not the same time as the bike, right? And I don't know if you guys know, inside the helmet was actually kind of a name and number. So there wouldn't be any doubt that helmet actually belonged to Suzanne. One question I've got is, whose handwriting was that in that sort of note in the paper inside the helmet? Just a thought that I've got. Okay, so we're starting. The other thing that is fascinating with the Morphew affidavit is how many interviews Barry gives. So, if you think about Chris Watts, you sort of have Chris Watts giving the sort of statements that he gives in front of the television, and also in the Tranastich home, and also in his home to various people. And then, of course, he's interviewed by Coda, on I think it was a Tuesday night. And then there's the polygraph and that interview following. And, all of that is like really interesting, what he says and how the authorities make their case and how they figure things out. Well, with Barry, there are multiple interviews going over a long, long time. And it's really fascinating going through all of these interviews, not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it's lots of interviews. I don't know if it's 13, I'm not quite sure what the number is, but there are lots of them. And it's really interesting sort of going through this sort of tapestry of versions of events, and then also putting together the versions of some other people in the story. So we're going to start with a May 11th interview, and there's so much redacted from here. It's quite difficult to see what this is about, but I think this was a interview with Miles, the boyfriend of one of the Morphew daughters. And so a sergeant spoke with, and then it's redacted. I think that refers to Miles. You'll see why as we go a little bit further on. So the sergeant spoke to Miles, I think, on May 11th, 2020. And this person, I think Miles, confirmed that Suzanne wrote religious devotionals in a journal. When asked to describe her, another part's redacted, bedding at the Morphew house, this same person said that her bed is always made, her sheets and pillowcases are light blue in color, and that her comforter is brown and reddish. It could also possibly be Sheila Oliver. It's someone who would have access to the inside of the Morphew home. And so that would be someone like a boyfriend, a neighbor, good friend of Suzanne's. So anyway, the sergeant spoke with, again redacted, I think it's Miles, on May 11th, 2020, and admitted that her parents argued a lot and that she feared they would separate or divorce. Now, I could be wrong, but my impression is that body cam where you see Miles talking is dated May 10th. I could be wrong. But we do know that Miles did say that her parents argued a lot, and so this obviously isn't Miles, because it says she feared they would separate or divorce. So this might actually be Sheila Oliver. She feared they would separate or divorce. She said that they were not doing well and that it was the best that they would separate. This person reported that Barry and Suzanne were both in an unsafe place emotionally. So this might actually be part of what is excluded, what the statements that Sheila's made, if this is Sheila, that need to be excluded from the whole thing. Sorry, I didn't actually know. I thought this was Miles based on my first read through of this. Anyway, next part, also redacted. The person stated, someone and my dad are different people and they, Suzanne and Barry, argue. And I mean, like, I don't know if I want to read about this too much. Okay. So anyway, just the bullet point for this particular page, Suzanne, also this part's redacted. Something was an iMessage text that Suzanne sent at 13:58 that said stunning in response to some photos somebody had sent to Suzanne, maybe Sheila. And then in multiple interviews with the FBI in 2021, including one on the 22nd of April 2021, so almost a year after the fact, Barry denied that he and Suzanne discussed divorce. Now you can actually see some references to it in Suzanne's texts, and those texts were actually subsequently deleted. That's also a really interesting question, is why? So I suppose you could say, can you prove that texts were deleted? Because Barry might say, no, I was just making space on my phone. I wasn't targeting text. I just was like, well, I just need to make space on my phone. Oh, and so that's how texts were deleted. In other words, I didn't deliberately cover up or delete text. I just was trying to make space on my phone. And by doing that, that created the scenario where the texts were deleted. But again, you've got to say, it seems a bit strange. When you make space on your phone, you tend to make space by deleting videos, things that are big files. A text isn't really going to take up that much space. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're right. But if you just look at the text in the affidavit, it talks about she said, she felt, so it's obviously a female. Okay, so the eighth, what do you call it? The eighth footnote reads as follows. This statement by redacted contradicts Barry's repeated assertion to CBI that he deleted arguments between him and Suzanne on his phone because his daughters always looked in his phone. So Barry repeatedly told the CBI that he deleted arguments. So here he's actually admitting it. Barry deleted arguments, and the reason he did was because his daughters would look on his phone. Do you think that is, do you believe that? Do you believe that is the reason why he would delete the arguments? So I'm just going to show you guys the map so that you can see what I'm talking about. There is Salida. The route going up is going up towards Broomfield. You can see it first goes slightly west as it's going north, and then the part that's cut off at the top then curves to the west, right? But the part you see at the bottom, the I-50 going to Poncha Springs and Maysville, that is where Barry apparently drove. He drove west on that road before going north to Broomfield. And I'm just saying it's possible that he used this road going up over here. Instead of going all the way back to Salida and then going that way, he may have used this road to connect with the 291. I don't know whether that's a fact. I'm just saying if he was anywhere along this road, he could have made use of this road to get to where he was going. So I think it's just important to have that map in your mind as we go through the next bit of information. Let's just look at some of your comments. Yeah, Andy really stepped up. Andy's Suzanne's brother. Well, now the orientation's a bit out. I know I'm quite OCD, so when this happens, it's pretty annoying. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to do much better than that. Could be better. You know, a green screen would be the best, wouldn't it? Okay, so we're on to the next page. It's page 7 of 129. Actually, it's page 6, I think, of 129, and we're going to start dealing with Barry's interviews. So let's just complete this section. Again, redacted said that Suzanne always carried her cell phone with her and had a charging cable on her nightstand next to her bed. This is something we also heard about Shanann. Shanann had her phone with her all over the place. I think probably most people are like that. I'm a little bit not like that. If I go to gym, I don't take my phone with me. If I go walk my dog, I don't take my phone with me. I don't like kind of being in touch all the time kind of thing. But there are people who are like that. I think most people are like that. They've got their phone with them wherever they go. But it's also interesting that she always had her charging cable on her nightstand next to her bed. And that brings us to footnote 9 on page 7. It should be noted that when the residence was searched, law enforcement did not locate a charging cable on either side of the bed. And you know what what Barry's story was that he left Suzanne sleeping. So it wasn't as if Suzanne was preparing to run away, to start a new life somewhere else, and she'd already packed away her charging cable. It was that she was still asleep. Oh, but so why is the charging cable gone? Did she take the charging cable with her when she went on a mountain bike ride? So that's like a small little detail, but one of many small little details that don't really make sense, right? Okay, then the sergeant spoke with Jean Ritter, who confirmed that somebody contacted her and Martin Ritter via telephone on May 10, 2020. As far as I know, I could be wrong. I think Jean and Martin are the neighbors. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, and they contacted, this contact was made between 4 and 4:30 p.m. because she could not reach Suzanne. So this was what was taking place on the day of the incident, where the Ritters started kind of becoming anxious and started making phone calls at between 4 and 4:30 on May 10th, which is sort of the late after. I think Suzanne had been missing from around about this time the previous day, but no one had really noticed it. On Mother's Day, they started noticing she wasn't answering her calls, and it really came to a head at around about 4:30 on the afternoon of Mother's Day. And so somebody asked them to go to the house and check on Suzanne, and Jean went to the house. I think that's the neighbor. She did not locate Suzanne at the house, so she called Barry and told him what happened. This is really important. So Jean calls Barry, and then what does Barry do? And so that is, just bear that in mind. Barry asked Jean to look for Suzanne's bicycle and call 911 if she didn't locate Suzanne. So that's quite interesting, is that Barry kind of knew to ask Jean to look for the bicycle. And we don't know for a fact, but if Barry did plant the bicycle, then him saying, go and look for the bicycle would be exactly what he wants. He wants someone to find the bicycle and then say, well, something must have happened to her. She went for a bike ride when Barry was somewhere else, and then something happened that Barry doesn't know about, kind of thing. So I think that's also quite interesting. It's another small piece that seems irrelevant or insignificant, but it is actually quite pertinent. So Barry asks Jean to look for Suzanne's bicycle, tells her, I think, that she must call 911 if she doesn't locate Suzanne. That's also quite interesting. So Barry's not going to call 911. Suzanne must. And so Jean returns to the house a second time, but once again doesn't locate the bicycle or Suzanne. After Jean returned home the second time, Martin called 911. So now we know exactly who called 911. Not Jean, but Martin, her husband, to report that Suzanne was missing. Martin sent Jean back to the Morphy house once more. So this is kind of like a third time to leave a few notes posted for Suzanne in case Suzanne returned. So that would be quite interesting to hear. We still haven't heard that the 911 call. I don't know if it would be particularly useful or insightful, because I don't think Martin is a suspect here. I think it's always interesting to hear a 911 call from a suspect. Do they sound appropriately emotional? Do they give something away? So now we come to the first interview of many from Barry, and this is where it really starts to get quite interesting. In the early morning hours of May 11, 2020, I think it's Chaffee County Sheriff's Officer. Yeah, just says CCSO. But anyway, the Detective Burgess, and your affiant interviewed Barry Morphew. So in the early morning hours of May 11, Barry was interviewed, I guess formally. And so Barry gives his first version of events. This is quite important. The first version of events he gives. What's the second version? Are they the same? If not, how are they different? What's the third version? Are they the same? Are they different? Fourth, fifth, and so on. And so this is the first version. It's quite important to remember these details. This is the first version he gives. Barry explained that he left his residence at approximately 5 a.m. on May 10, 2020, to travel to Broomfield, Colorado for a construction job. So that's his first story. I left home at 5 o'clock in the morning and I went to Broomfield, right? Let me ask you, do you think there's anything wrong with that statement so far? I got up at 5, or I left at 5, and I went to Broomfield. Is there anything wrong so far with that statement? Okay, so Stephanie says there was no job on Sunday. You could argue that there was a job in Broomfield and he was going there to prepare for it. He wasn't really going there to work, but to sort of get set up for the work on Monday. I guess you could say that. But it does seem odd. Something that I think we're going to get to in a moment is Suzanne's father, I think, said that Barry never worked on a Sunday. And Barry's quite a pious fellow. You'll come across him repeatedly sort of invoking God and what God thinks and what God judges. And yet here he is working on a Sunday. And who knows what kind of work he really was doing on the Sunday. It makes you sort of wonder, what does he really think about his religion, kind of thing. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of address this for you guys. I thought you guys would say this, but number one, I don't think that Barry did leave at 5 o'clock. So in other words, he said he left at 5. I don't think he did. I think the telematics showed that he left earlier, like at 4. So it's quite similar to the Chris Watts case, where he sort of changed his story. Also, he didn't travel to Broomfield. Like I say, he actually traveled west. So he left that part out. So this is the rest of his statement. He said he did not speak to his wife Suzanne that morning because she was still asleep when he left. Now, again, it's hard not to compare this to the Chris Watts case. Did Chris Watts speak to his wife that morning? And now, because he said he did, now he's got to say what he said and how long they spoke and what did she feel and what blah, blah, blah. And of course, Chris Watts can't really remember that very clearly. And so in Barry's version, he doesn't speak to his wife. Bear in mind it's Mother's Day. He gets up quite early, leaves Suzanne on Mother's Day, doesn't even sort of give her a kiss on the cheek, Happy Mother's Day, my darling, kind of thing. And, so that's another little detail, but, is it significant or isn't it? Can it be added to the whole mosaic, kind of thing? And so he said he didn't speak to her because she was still asleep when he left, right? But you've also got to assume that if she was mountain biking, that she'd get up fairly early to go mountain biking. It's summer and you want to kind of mountain bike at the best time, which is kind of early morning. Anyway, Barry says she was still asleep when he left. Barry stated that his daughters were to return to their home on May 10th from a camping trip. Now, I think that's also quite interesting is when did his daughters actually return from the camping trip? Because you don't really see them, unless it's redacted, but you don't really see them in any of the body cam. They don't seem to be around. I don't know if they are around, but you don't really seem to see them on May 10th. They don't seem to be around, So that's kind of a question. Where were they and when did they actually get back? He says they were supposed to return to their home on May 10th from a camping trip. He doesn't really say exactly where they were, but I don't know if that is completely accurate either. I could be wrong, maybe it is accurate, but they just don't feature kind of in the narrative. You don't see the daughters looking for Suzanne kind of thing on May 10th. Barry said that he texted his wife to wish her Happy Mother's Day and did not get a response, possibly due to poor cell service at their residence. And so it's kind of, he's already kind of being defensive, I think, saying, trying to explain why not only she may have not gotten the message, but why it would have been kind of normal not to expect a response because of the spotty cell service. So you can kind of say, you know what, if I don't get a response, that's kind of okay. It's kind of like what Chris Watts said when he said, Shanann's friends will text her and she gets quite busy during the day and if she doesn't respond to me, that's normal because she gets busy. It's kind of, Barry's also saying, if I don't hear from my wife, well, it could be down to the poor cell service kind of thing. Then Barry said he did try to text her again later that morning, again with no response. That also corresponds to what happened with Chris Watts. He also sent his staged, when I say correspond, I'm just saying Chris Watts also sent messages to his wife. Those were staged messages. And Chris Watts knew he wasn't going to get an answer, but it made him look like he was a concerned husband. Barry said he tried to text her again later that morning, no response. Barry reached his daughters via text messages, and they also stated they could not reach their mother. Barry specifically provided his route of travel to Broomfield, and in all subsequent interviews with CBI, Barry never stated that he turned west on Highway 50, right? Now we're going to deal with what we're sort of talking about with the helmet. We'll get to that in a moment. Let me just repeat that. Barry specifically provided his route of travel to Broomfield, and in all subsequent interviews with the CBI, that's the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Barry never stated that he turned west on Highway 50. So I have showed you guys the map. That goes west, and from Salida to Broomfield, he needs to go north and kind of east. It does go slightly to the west before it curves to the east. And so Barry just doesn't mention that. And now that brings us to footnote 11, and that is dealing with this aspect. Now remember my question, when do you think the helmet was put there? Footnote 11, Suzanne's helmet was discovered off the south side of Highway 50, west of County Road 225 entrance that leads to the Morpheus Puma Path residence. Hello, Christine. Good to have you with us. Yeah, Stephanie, you're right. It is an odd way to travel that way to Broomfield. So let me ask you guys the same question again. Do you think the helmet was placed there or left there or dropped there on the same day and at the same time as the bicycle, or that it happened at a different time? Stephanie says it's likely that he did that on the way. So Stephanie seems to have changed her opinion on that particular score. Anyone else having second thoughts on that particular point? Andar, good to have you with us. Andar says, I feel like he would do the bike and helmet at the same time. Okay. You also for the first one that sort of said that directly. Terry says, odd way, but popular scenic route. I've been through there many times. My best friend forever lives in Salida. Oh, really? That's really interesting. So you think he may have taken the scenic route to a work site, maybe he wanted to watch the sun come up over the mountains or something. So Terry, you're not seeing anything strange in that? Andor says, isn't the whole bike ride a fiction? Yes, but the question here is just when did the helmet get there? And how did the helmet get there? Did it get there as part of someone driving out and going somewhere, or was it brought there later on, right? So it's going to become clearer to you as we go through this. Okay, so now we're going to another interview. Oh, hang on, this is just a bit further down from here. Okay, this is further down from the same interview. Barry explained that his wife's plan for May 10th. So now Barry's explaining what Suzanne's sort of plan of action was for Mother's Day, right? Barry explained that his wife's plan was to clean the house and get the spare bedrooms ready for their two daughters coming back with possibly a friend to visit. Barry said that his wife rides a mountain bike every day. So kind of the moment that I see that Suzanne's plan for May 10th was to clean the house and the spare bedrooms, get the spare bedrooms ready, and maybe a friend was coming to visit. My first question would be, wasn't she going to ride a bike? Also, when was she going to ride a bike? That would be something I would want to establish. When do you think she rode a bike, kind of thing? That's kind of a question I haven't heard coming up much. Like, yeah, good point from Stephanie. What a lovely Mother's Day. Clean the house, get the bedrooms ready. But that's getting the bedrooms ready is quite an interesting point. It suggests that bedrooms have been, blankets have been moved, blankets may have been washed, all that kind of thing. It could be that Barry added this. I don't know. We don't have the benefit of the actual kind of interview room interview. We don't really have that at our disposal like we had with the Chris Watts case. But based on the way this narrative is unfolding, you see that Barry then says, oh, his wife rides a mountain bike every day. So I kind of wonder how this actually played out. Was he was asked, what was Suzanne going to do on May 10th? This Mother's Day. What was going to happen? Barry would then say, "Oh, she's going to clean the house, get the spare bedrooms ready." Then there could possibly have been a follow-up question from the detective saying, "Well, and the mountain biking?" And Barry might have said, "Oh, yeah, she mountain bikes every day." Now, again, this is speculation. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know who would know whether that's true or not. I don't really get the idea that she did mountain bike every day. I could be wrong, maybe she did. But we know kind of what she did the day before. In other words, on May 9th, we know that she was sort of suntanning by the pool. I don't, does anyone think that Suzanne went mountain biking on May 9th? Maybe she did, but I doubt it. What was she doing on that day? Well, we know some of what she was doing. The other reason why I don't think she mountain biked every day is I'm a mountain biker. I mountain biked earlier today. Like she posted an Instagram, and we'll deal with that in the affidavit as well. She posted an Instagram thing saying, "My first broken chain" or something. And you kind of got a very newbie feeling about her mountain biking, that she was quite new to it, that she was kind of still enjoying it. To me, her mountain bike doesn't look particularly kind of expert level. The pedals don't look particularly expert. I could be wrong. But I don't really kind of get the impression that, and even from what Miles said, that there was a particular climb that was crazy difficult that she wouldn't be able to do, and she probably didn't do it. I just don't get the feeling that was the case. But I could be wrong. Maybe she did mountain bike every day. If she did mountain bike every day, she would probably mountain bike at the same time every day. That's how a lot of people who train consistently train. And a lot of people who train consistently do that first thing in the morning. And did Suzanne do that first thing in the morning? Well, then she would have been up at the same time Barry was sort of, preparing to leave. Anyway, that's just a small little kind of nitpick there. Barry said, he added that Suzanne was diagnosed with cancer twice in her life and she beat it. Now, again, I'm just intuiting, I could be wrong, but I can imagine Barry saying that Suzanne rides every day, and then if you go and check that up, someone might say, no, she doesn't ride every day. And then Barry saying, she was diagnosed with cancer suggests, well, when she had cancer, she obviously didn't ride every day. But I don't know if you're following what I'm saying. I don't think she rode every day, regardless of the cancer. But if you went and followed that up, you would think, oh, the cancer is why she didn't ride every day. So it's a kind of an explanation is it in the spirit of the conversation accurate kind of thing? Christine says mountain biking is hard, especially after battling cancer. Mountain biking is also hard after you've written 100 books. It's also quite difficult. Thanks, Bria. Thanks for that comment you made. The other thing I think I'm not going to go into that. Ando says maybe he was angry about the biking and that's why he chose that way of getting rid of her. I think Jeff was a driving force behind her biking. I think Jeff kind of introduced her to it, and she was getting enthusiastic about it, and I think sharing some of her exploits on the bike with Jeff, it was something that they were kind of having in common. And so it is possible that you're right. It is possible that Barry consciously or subconsciously held that against her, the mountain biking. because the other side to it is, did Barry mountain bike? You know, and if not, why not? Why wouldn't Barry go mountain biking with his wife? You know, it's such a beautiful area. Why wouldn't you do that? And so I think that's also quite an interesting line of thought. Barry said that he owned firearms and all. This is, again, just a small little detail. Again, like I say, when you're trying to look for these big, spectacular what the ifs, you sort of find something and, you know, and it's like not really a big deal, but this is nevertheless a significant detail. Here we go. Barry said that he owned firearms and all the firearms and ammunition are stored in a locked gun safe in the garage. This also reminds me a little bit about the Alec Baldwin case and the story about that the arms were, you know, secured and so on. Anyway, so he says he owns firearms and they are stored in a locked gun safe in the garage. And the affidavit goes on to say, it should be noted that on May 11, 2020, while law enforcement searched the Morphew residence, this is just one day later, 2 firearms were located at the residence that were not inside a gun safe. Not 1, 2. A high-powered rifle was located in a closet on the ground floor. And then they say again, in a closet. And one wonders what that is all about. Why was that not in the safe? And is that relevant? Let me say that again. A high-powered rifle was located in a closet on the ground floor. Then the rifle appeared to be spray painted in a camouflage pattern and your affiant could not locate a serial number. That's not mentioned for fun. The fact that the serial number on this particular weapon is not there. So what's the story behind that weapon? Then a Benelli 12-gauge shotgun was found lying against the wall in the garage. So that was the second firearm that wasn't in the safe. And then also a loaded .22 long rifle cartridge was located lying on the floor in the master bedroom near the right side of the bed. So a lot of us know about that. A cartridge, I don't know if that means a spent casing, was located on the floor in the master bedroom. That is quite significant. To me, that is kind of as significant as the residue found in the bed sheets in the kitchen trash in the Chris Watts case. It seems to indicate that somebody didn't sleep that well that night, doesn't it? So here is another footnote. It's footnote 12. Just refers to, is the same unfired .22 round previously referenced above. Okay, so this was not a spent casing. So it was a live round that was lying on the ground there. Now, you'd kind of imagine that if there was a spent casing, someone would pick it up. That if someone was running around the house after Suzanne and a shot went off and a casing was sort of plinked down onto the floor, that someone would pick that up and cover their tracks. But a live round, you might not realize is there, if I can put it that way. You might not realize a live round somehow got, what's the word? The process of the live round leaving the chamber. Not sure what the technical term is for that, but ejected, I guess. After your affiant ended the interview with Barry, he was told that law enforcement was going to seize his truck to process it. So you can see quite early on, the authorities didn't seem to trust Barry. They took his truck, I think. So this is directly after this interview. They took his truck to search for evidence. And bear in mind, that is pretty similar to also what happened in the Chris Watts case. They spoke to Chris Watts on the Tuesday night. I think that same night his truck was impounded. Actually, is that accurate? Because he went to fetch his dad from the airport. So it must have been Wednesday night, the night of the confession. That was when the truck was impounded. Okay, so now we go to May 11th, 2020, the search of the Puma Path residence. And then after that, we're going to deal with Suzanne's helmet. Just have a look at some of your comments while we're already at an hour. Sharon says, their great room creeps me out. Poor animals on the walls. Okay. Discharge. It's not really, to me, it's like when you discharge a shot, I think it's a different, I think it gets ejected, a round gets ejected, it sort of pops out. But a live round isn't discharged. I think it just sort of might fall out the chamber. You know, if you're loading, it might eject, kind of thing, but without actually being fired. Okay, so we now on page 8 of 129. This is the search of the Puma Path residence. I must say, this is also fascinating, and also when they talk about the cadaver dogs, like if you think about the cadaver dogs that searched, can you like think off the top of your head, did the cadaver dogs find anything? Yes or no? Let's just see what you guys think. On the question of cadaver dogs were brought to the Puma Path home. Do you think the cadaver dogs alerted? Yes or no? Let's see what you guys say. Christine says, can't law enforcement get the iCloud data when it's a missing person? I used to work for Yahoo, and the Danish police often came with a search warrant. Well, the iCloud data is part of this story. Okay, so the question is, do you think cadaver dogs alerted to anything in the Barry Morphew case? Yes or no? So Robbie says no. Anyone else? Bria says apparently they did. Do you know more than that, Bria? Jean says not at his home, no. Okay. Jean, do you know where they did alert, if they did alert? Stephanie, you awfully quiet. Okay, so we're going to deal with that. And again, you're going to be quite surprised by what is actually in the affidavit. Jean says on the Bobcat, maybe. Okay, good point. Stephanie says, I don't know. I think they alerted at a tree in creek bed. Okay. Bria says, was it at one of his work sites? Almost, but not quite. We're going to get to that. Okay, so search of Puma Path residence. On May 11, 2020, pursuant to an authorized search warrant obtained by your affiant, just bear the following in mind. The day after Suzanne goes missing, so she goes missing on May 10th, the very next day, the police issue a search warrant on the Morphew home because they already don't believe Barry. They're not searching the home because they think Suzanne ran off or went mountain biking and got hurt. They're searching the home because they don't believe what Barry said. They think we're going to find clues in the home. So it seems like law enforcement didn't trust Barry immediately. And so they're already searching the home on day one. And so the question is, did they find anything when they searched the home? And so this sort of deals with that. So they say, while assisting with a search of the exterior of the residence, your affiant located what appeared to be suspect blood on the apron of the garage near the east side of the 3-car garage. Did you know that? They located what appeared to be suspect blood on the apron of the garage near the east side of the 3-car garage. Thanks a lot, Terry. Stephanie's putting up rockets and brains. Sharon says no. Terry says the choice to end Suzanne's life on Mother's Day is intentionally egregious and traumatic to his daughters. I've heard no mention that the girls' lives could have been in danger as well one day later. Terry, I don't actually think that Suzanne died on Mother's Day. So I don't actually think Suzanne lost her life on May 10th. I actually think she lost her life around about, we need to actually be very more concise about this. And I guess one will be over time, but I think it would have happened somewhere around, 5, 6 p.m. on Saturday. But that, as I say, needs to be fine-tuned. So let's just go on here. So in terms of the blood on the apron of the garage, that is either a big deal or it isn't. What I mean is, all things being equal, you'd think that that is extremely significant. I know some of you may remember me talking about the Jill Packham case, and she was killed by her husband in the garage, put in the trunk of a vehicle. The vehicle was burned, all that kind of, anyway, that happened in the garage. The garage also played sort of a role in the Chris Watts case, but and we know that there was I think a 12-gauge shotgun also not in the safe in the garage. But because we're dealing with Barry Morphew, we've also got to be fair and say, well, he was a hunter, and I think his story was that he shot deer sometimes from standing in the garage, and so that could explain that it could be animal blood, right? The other thing is that they say it appeared to be, it's kind of like a typo in a critical area. It says what appeared to be suspect blood. I don't know if they mean blood from the suspect or suspicious blood, or I guess it's suspected blood on the apron of the garage. Another case where there was blood in the garage was the Letitia Store case. So it can be very significant, but it's also possible that it could be due to animal dressing or something. The problem is it blood or not? And if they don't know, then it's possible that blood has been cleaned and washed or something, and so they can't actually do DNA analysis on it. It's quite an interesting question. Did they do DNA analysis? Did they confirm that it's blood, or is there just a little bit of a, like, for example, did they use Blue Star, and Blue Star showed that it could be blood, but it could also be fruit juice, right? So So again, that is like something that can be argued either way. It could be very significant, but it could also be something else. But if you think about the Barrymore case, just this idea, well, blood was found near the garage. Wow, you know. They also say the east side of the three-car garage. I'm not quite sure what that means. I don't know whose cars were parked where, but theoretically that is significant. Then it goes on to say, additionally, it was noted by your affiant and other investigators that there was a Bobcat skid steer parked in a parking area driveway west of the Morphew residence. This is quite important. Bear in mind the Bobcat is kind of at the residence. The Bobcat comes up in the search of the kind of exterior of the residence. It goes on to say the trailer was in its tilt position. The trailer bed had some loose gravel and dirt on it. The trailer did not have a jack on it, and the tongue of the trailer was lying on the ground. The skid steer was parked to the left side near the trailer tongue. The items were positioned such that the skid steer bucket appeared to have been used to unhitch the trailer from a vehicle, most likely Barry's truck, and set the trailer on the ground. Now, I'm not really sure what all of that means. I think that kind of needs to be demonstrated. If I was a member of the jury, I would be like, okay, a lot is going on with this Bobcat, but I don't really know exactly what that means. So what I think you would need to do is actually drive the Bobcat, and you could even maybe take the jurors on scene and show them what this is about. How relevant is it? We're going to get to that in a moment. But one thing that really sticks out to me in this particular description is they say the trailer bed had some loose gravel and dirt on it. Now, I don't know whether they tested that, but it just makes me think about the Patrick Frazee case, where part of what he did with the crime scene was he covered, so he set fire to his fiance's remains. It made like a huge fire. Her remains were in a plastic tote, and the plastic tote melted and created like a blackened sort of scar on the ground. I wrote a book on the Patrick Frazee case. I really followed the trial and investigated that case in detail. It's called Murder Most Foul, and the important part to stress is that he then covered the burn mark on the driveway with loose gravel. And so when the authorities came to investigate, they just couldn't find her. They were looking all over for the victim in the Patrick Frazee case, and meanwhile they were like driving over the driveway constantly, and only much later did they clear away the gravel. And I don't know if it was Crystal Kenny who gave this information, but they found this scar. They had to sweep away the gravel, and they found this burn scar, and ultimately found just a fragment of a tooth. That was the only sort of remains of a person that they were able to find. And the amazing thing was that they were able to establish that from this fragment of a tooth, that it belonged to a human female. How they knew that, I really don't know. But so in that particular case, somebody used dirt, just a layer of dirt and gravel, to help literally cover over crime. And so I'm just saying that sort of pings on my radar. There's also this layer of dirt and loose gravel. And again, you could say, yeah, but that could just have to do with construction. Did they test that gravel? And another reason why this is quite important is because, and we're going to get to this, is because of alerts on the Bobcat. So you might say, did they test the dirt or the gravel? Well, dogs' noses did. We'll get to that in a moment. It goes on to say, your affiant examined the skid steer, noted that the cutting edge of the skid steer bucket had been recently replaced, so there was no wear on it. It was also noted several larger bolts and nuts were lying in the skid steer bucket and on the front end of the trailer bed, right? So what they're saying here is that quite a lot was going on with the Bobcat, and that I think the thing that sort of loads it, bolts had been removed and were sort of lying sort of all over the place. It's also quite difficult to know what to make of that. Anyway, that brings us to footnote 13. In a news story that aired on Fox 21 on the 21st of August 2020, so this is several months after the incident, Barry stated that he had an inconsistency with one timeline. So in an actual interview, he said to the interviewer that he had an inconsistency with one timeline, and then he added that I was only because when I just didn't know the time that I did something, a mechanical thing to my Bobcat, I was confused and I just found out my wife was missing. What they're trying to say there is that, in his own words, Barry admitted that at the time that his wife was missing, I did something mechanical. Now, I don't really know what to make of that. I think you don't either. But I think at this point, all that is important is to be aware that there's an inconsistency with the timeline. The Bobcat is relevant. We're just not quite sure how, but we will get to that. And now we're going to deal with Suzanne's helmet. So this is the bottom of page 8. Just look at some of your comments. Stephanie says the gravel could be traced to a specific landscape. Stephanie says same members of defense as Crystal Kenny, as Barry Morphy are now the same court. Well, it's in the 11th Judicial District. It's not the same court. It's not quite the same court. I think that was in Cripple County or something. This one is in Cannon Court or something, Cannon City. I don't know if it's the same. It's not the same defense lawyers. As far as I know, it's not the same. No. Terry says Barry seemed quite confident during the search of his home. Okay. Christine says, do you remember the case about a doctor that killed his wife, froze her, and put her through a wood chipper? Yeah, I know about that. I don't think that is... if you know the facts of the case, Suzanne was still... She was definitely around on Saturday, for example, because she sent a selfie to her Paramore. So we know that she was certainly around on Saturday lunchtime. But the wood chipper thing is definitely something to consider, given that there's not only landscaping, but timber, what's the word? Forest management, or anyway, I don't really want to go into that right now. Bria says, what do you think Barry was dumping around town, and was any of it ever found? I think they did find... I think they did find, I'll say this under correction, but I think they did find tranquilizer chemicals or tranquilizer solution in one of the drops. And I suppose you could ask the question, could they link this to Barry? I'm not sure if they could at this point. But as far as I know, that's something they did find. Terry says, were there any searches of landfills connected to the places Barry took trash? I don't know. I don't know what... I know they searched a lot of landfills in the Patrick Frazee case. And I do think the remains of the burn site were taken to... Some of it was, I think, dumped in a river, and some of it was taken to a landfill, as far as I'm aware. Bria says that she thinks that Barry saw messages and then did something. I don't think so. I think I don't think that he just snapped. My impression was when Suzanne told him, "I'm done," when Suzanne kind of stood up for herself, and you've also got to remember Suzanne. I think was a fairly passive person, a fairly introverted person, a person who allowed someone else to take the lead. I think Barry didn't expect her to kind of stand up to him, and I don't think he expected her to sort of leave him or be able to leave him. And my impression was that when she kind of said, "I'm done," in a pretty like firm way, she may have kind of communicated something similar prior to that. I think that may have, how can I put it? That may have been a seminal moment in Barry's mind. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But that to me is, I don't think that Barry found a message and then, your version. Bear in mind, it's innocent till proven guilty. So if you're on this chat, please don't say Barry's definitely guilty or Barry's a liar, whatever. The case it's going to be examined in court. And so that is where we will find out what can be proven and what we know for a fact. At this point, we don't know things for a fact. We're going through the affidavit to see what law enforcement have found, what evidence they found, what evidence they may have found, what facts may be out there, what facts may be provable, and what may not be provable. Just bear that in mind. And that's also why I kind of prefer a smaller chat, because it's quite a sensitive case at this point. I also saw that, Jean. Okay, so mods, just be aware of that whole thing. I don't really want anyone in chat saying Barry's a murderer or Barry's definitely guilty. We're in a situation now where it's quite sensitive legally, including for me. We're trying to see what can be proved in court and whether it will be proved or not, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So even Stephanie, you saying, I think Barry premeditated this, we don't know. We don't know that. So we want to look at possible signs of premeditation, but it's, I think, a little bit early to be saying that sort of thing, if you know what I'm saying. In terms of the premeditation scenario, if you take the Chris Watts case, you see there's an affair and there's money issues going back for quite a long way. And so you can see it's not just an instant something happens, there are driving forces. And as these driving forces escalate and accumulate and aggregate and pile onto one another, there may be a sense of thinking about a solution, even a rash solution. So one's got to ask the question, are some of the circumstances in the Chris Watts case, which was definitely premeditated, are they present in this case? And if so, how much so? And if so, how clear is it? And how can it be demonstrated, kind of thing. One of the things I always say is where you see post-meditation, in other words, something happens and there's like, for example, with the Chris Watts case, he seamlessly, after he does something, he goes to Survey 319 and he disposes and he does his other things. He calls the school, he calls the realtor, he calls the bank, and it's kind of all part of the plan, right? So when you have that kind of seamless post-meditation, then it does tend to suggest premeditation. And so again, in this case, you've got to ask the question, what happened on Mother's Day? Was there a lot of post-meditation? And bear in mind, you first got to make sure that there was, and so on. Bear in mind, in this case, there's not a body, so it's a little bit different. But you've got to kind of apply the same sort of formula and see if it works. Was there the same degree of post-meditation? And, did it sort of unfold seamlessly? And then could that mean that there's also premeditation? It's a question. So Stephanie does say, the video of Barry making multiple garbage dumps is strange behavior. It definitely is. And, it's on that day. Why is it happening that day? Did he do it on other days? If so, what other days? Did Barry normally take out the garbage? Did he normally take it out on a Sunday? Okay, so now we're dealing with Suzanne's helmet. On May 13, 2020, so this is 3 days later. 3 days later, on May 13, 2020, search teams located what they believe to be the bicycle helmet Suzanne would have been wearing. Investigators located a photo of Suzanne prior to this date with Suzanne wearing the helmet, documenting its teal color, and I guess this was on Instagram. This item was located at the following GPS coordinates, and this is quite important. This is a really important aspect in the affidavit that you can kind of extrapolate with. They give the exact GPS coordinates for where the helmet was found. It was found at 38.55008. That's the one coordinate, and the other one is 106.2575. And that was approximately 0.84 miles northwest of the site the bicycle was located. So less than 1 mile from the bicycle, the helmet was found. And so my first question is, was it found quite near the road? That was something I mentioned in a previous episode. And the question that implies is, if the bicycle was carried to where it was on a vehicle, bear in mind, someone else could have cycled the bicycle to where it was and then thrown it off, but that would be a bit of a risk. Or someone could put the bicycle at the back of a vehicle like a truck, stopped along the side of the road, threw it down a ravine, and then driven a little bit further and then thrown the helmet off the side of the road as well. And how can I put this? So what's kind of implied is that somebody rode a mountain bike, fell off it, and then I guess walked along the bottom of this area and then took the helmet off or whatever. But is that what happened, or did someone put the helmet there? So this is what they say. It was found. Listen to this, very important. The bicycle northwest of the site the bicycle was located. The helmet was found approximately 10 meters south of Highway 50 and about 1.52 miles from the Morphew residence. So it was found 10 meters from the highway. Do you think that's far enough to throw the helmet from a vehicle, like to literally toss it out the window kind of thing? What do you think? Inside the helmet, law enforcement located a piece of paper in the top portion of the helmet with Suzanne's name, phone number, and address, as well as Barry, and then it also talks about other phone numbers. This item was collected by law enforcement and placed into evidence. As I say, I'd love to know who wrote that note, is it in Suzanne's handwriting. And now we go into page 9 of 129. Let's just look at your comments. Let me ask you guys the same question again. Do you think the helmet was dumped on the same day as the bicycle, or do you think it was dumped on a different day? Anyone? Do you think the bicycle helmet was dumped on the same day that the bicycle was dumped, like by whoever was going out, or on a different day? So Robbie says same day. Stephanie says, I now think the same day. Madeline says, hard to say. So two of you seem to have changed your minds. Jean still thinks it was another day. Okay, so Christine says, how do law enforcement know Suzanne sent a Paramore photo the day before Mother's Day? Well, because it's in the discovery. It's part of the, let's call it the phone data review. You can actually see the photo and we know when it was sent. It's the last photo of Suzanne Morphew. I think that was recovered off Jeff Libler's phone, I'm assuming. As you say, they didn't find her phone, so yeah. Okay, so now we're going to page 9. On May 13, 2020, search teams were still searching areas in the proximity of Suzanne's bicycle and helmet, as well as law enforcement driving roads in these areas, attempting to locate Suzanne. During this effort, law enforcement located what they believed to be fresh tire impressions and a piece of cloth with a reddish-brown unknown substance on it. Once again, unknown substance on it. Also located in the area of the piece of cloth, tire impressions were located. These tire impressions were casted on May 14, 2020 by deputies with the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. As of the present date, these items appear to be unrelated to Suzanne's disappearance. Okay, so that's not particularly helpful. CBI crime scene report. FBI crime Special Agent S.A. Grusing provided the following excerpts from the CBI crime scene report, lab case, blah, 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 written by CBI crime scene analyst Tanya Atkinson. Regarding the interior of Barry's F350 on May 12, 2020, the interior of the truck was cluttered with several personal items. The interior dash area was dusty and dirty. I think why that's relevant is Barry's apparently cleaning the house or taking out the garbage. And I think he also said something about throwing trash out of his truck. Well, there's still quite a lot of trash in his truck. So if the whole idea was to get rid of trash, there was still a lot of trash. And if you look at like his gun safe, it's pretty messy. So you don't really get the sense that Barry was really perturbed or preoccupied with tidying up. And so why would he, if he wasn't generally, why was he particularly interested in tidying up on that day of all days? That's another little fragment that is potentially significant. The 15th, well, as Stephanie's given me $15, we're coming up to the 15th footnote. Let me just read that. Stephanie says, thank you for taking the time to go through this thoroughly with us. I have not gone through the document with a fine-tooth comb and am not as knowledgeable on the specific details of this case. No, it's absolutely fine. I wasn't either. And that's why I found when I did start going through the affidavit, I thought we need to go through this affidavit. That's why I say you deal with one case and then you get transplanted to another one. And so your knowledge of each case is shallow and superficial, and it shouldn't be. We've known about the Barry Morphew case for going on 2 years now. I think it's time that we know how much law enforcement knows, right? So, I feel the same way you did. I sort of thought I knew the case quite well, read some of the affidavit, but when I went through it thoroughly, I was like, wow, look at that. Oh, I see. And so that's what I want to share with you guys. And I want to do it before the case starts so that when we go into the trial, when we go into the trial, at least the true crime rocket science community, especially the members here, are kind of not experts, but are very au fait with, we know this case through and through, inside out. Because you can make assumptions like Christine made. How did they know about this photo? And maybe Suzanne had been missing for 3 days. Well, if you know the case, you wouldn't think that. So we need to know the case so we know how to direct our attention. I don't know, Bria. Okay, so anyway, the 15th footnote reads, the interior condition of Barry's truck conflicts with his subsequent statements to CBI and FBI that the purposes of his 5 trash runs in Broomfield were to clean out his truck. I don't know, I get kind of goose flesh when I read that, because if you think about it, Barry's story is that I did these 5 trash runs to clean out my truck. Not to clean out the house, which I would have assumed he said, but to clean out the truck. So then when they impound his truck, what do they find? They find that his truck is still cluttered and still kind of dirty. And so even after doing 5 trash runs, your truck is still filthy and dirty. Red flag, right? You see that? I must say, I was pretty shocked at the truck. It's covered in a layer of dust. It is quite a mess. Anyway, we go on a bit further. Regarding Suzanne's white Range Rover on May 19, 2020, there were personal items to include Suzanne's driver's license and credit cards throughout the vehicle. Items from the interior were pulled out by sections or areas and photographically documented on butcher paper. Some of the items collected included a woman's jacket and knit cap in the rear, pairs of sunglasses, and a key in the glove compartment. A camelback, do you guys know what that is? Do you guys know what a camelback is? Then they also found sunglasses in the front passenger seat, Spark chemicals on the front passenger floorboard. That's quite interesting. Chemicals on the front floorboard, and a Scott bicycle service receipt in the front driver door. Let's just see what you guys say. He was drawing attention away from the house. Terry, you know what you're talking about. Okay, so a camelback is kind of like, it seems kind of like a bladder. It's kind of like a plasticky, almost like a balloon, and mountain bike riders often have it on their backs, and there's sort of a tube that comes out, and you can kind of suck water out of the camelback kind of while you're riding. You don't have to sort of pick up a bottle. And the camelback also keeps, if the water's very cool or chilled, it can kind of keep you cool because the sun is hitting the camelback and the camelback is kind of against your body, and so it can keep you cool. And so what's quite interesting with this is, why doesn't she have the camelback with her? Why isn't she riding with a camelback? It's not necessarily absolutely integral to her going mountain biking, but the question is, so if she went mountain biking every day, didn't she take the camelback with her every day? So why didn't she take the camelback that day? And so all you really want to do is also put a bit of doubt on the defense case that she went mountain biking every day. Well, Why didn't she take her equipment with her? Why didn't she wear her cycling clothes? Did she have another pair of cycling pants, kind of thing? As Stephanie says, it's also handy while you're hiking. Okay, so it says Suzanne's Instagram pictures of her bike riding have a blue Camelback water pack visible, making it unlikely she would take a bike ride without it. So even on her Instagram, you see her actually using the Camelback and all that kind of thing. And it was hot, May 10, Colorado. Terry, I think you can tell us. Is Colorado hot in mid-May, kind of in the mountains? Yeah, Stephanie says she took a phone charger instead. Christine says my Camelback is a thermo bottle. It's just a brand. Oh, okay. Is Terry here? Terry, do you think it's hot in Colorado in sort of mid-May? I seem to remember when you saw Barry walking into the Morphew residence, he seemed to have a sweat stain down the middle of his back, unless it was a shadow, but it did seem like that was from the heat of that day. Terry says not usually very warm in that area. Jean says cool, maybe 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so I suppose theoretically you could say it wouldn't be hot enough to justify a Camelback if she went riding. I do think it's a good point from law enforcement to say, well, you have her actually wearing it. So let me just show you that picture. And I must say, when I look at that picture, she looks like she's dressed fairly warmly. I don't know if she's got a sort of, seems like a long sleeve cycling shirt, but she's using the Camelback. So another thing to consider is a water bottle. Did Suzanne normally ride with a water bottle? Just sort of that on its own. Because if she didn't, then you would have expected her to use the Camelback. That's quite an interesting point. I don't seem to remember there being a water bottle with the mountain bike that was recovered. Was there? Let me just see if I can quickly bring it up. Suzanne Morphew mountain bike. See if it comes up. Yeah, I don't see a water bottle. There's definitely not a water bottle there. Definitely not a water bottle. So that is relevant. That definitely is relevant. So this is quite interesting. I'm actually looking at the mountain bike that she's using. And it doesn't seem as though it's got much space for a water bottle because of the suspension, right? I'm going to show you this picture. Hope it allows me to. So let me show you this picture. So can you see over here is where you would normally have a mount for the water bottle, and there is no water bottle in this picture, but there's also no mount for it. There's no water bottle holder. There's no water bottle holder anywhere on the bike. And so one of the reasons why you probably couldn't fit it in there is because of the suspension here. And I've got a mountain bike that's also got dual suspension, and there is actually space on it for, you can see because of the geometry here, there's quite a big gap here. There's no space here for the water bottle. And so on my mountain bike, there is actually space, even though it does have this dual suspension. But you can see that Suzanne would likely want to take the Camelback with her because she would want to drink water while she was mountain biking. So I think we've actually made a little bit of an insight here. I don't know whether law enforcement are aware of this. They probably are. But it's not just the fact that the camelback was found in the vehicle, and that also that she took an Instagram of it, but also that there isn't an alternative. She couldn't have taken a water bottle with her, and she probably didn't even have a water bottle. Dress in layers that time of year when out exercising. Yeah. So I think that's quite an interesting point. Is it makes no sense that Suzanne would have gone mountain biking without taking water with her. And a person who's trying to stage that wouldn't think about the water. But a person who is literally going out mountain biking. I went mountain biking out today. I went for less than an hour. And I took a small water bottle with me, and it was virtually empty when I got back. It is one of the things you always do when you go mountain biking or riding. You get thirsty. I don't really know of any riders who go out without water bottles. You always take it with you. I don't know if you can compare it, but it's almost like going to gym without a towel. It's not quite the same thing, but it's a little bit similar to that. Okay, so let's just go a bit further. It just says here, a plastic needle cover was located in the dryer drum. This was collected by the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office along with additional items and swabs from different areas. The needle cover was recovered with sheets from the something bed inside the dryer. Quite interesting that sheets were washed as well. Now we go to section 2, Suzanne's attempts to leave Barry and her affair, right? This is page 11 of 129. Suzanne told numerous close friends, her daughters and Barry, that she wanted out of her marriage, yet Barry refused to listen to her. She suspected Barry of having affairs for years. She suspected Barry of having affairs for years, that's affairs plural, and kept her affair very secretive to protect her daughters and the family of Jeff Libler. A small portion of interviews and evidence of her attempts to leave Barry and of her affair follows. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to actually read this because it involves the Sheila Oliver interview. This was released to the public, so I don't know whether there's anything wrong with reading it out, but just to be careful and to honor what was expressed in court, I think we've got to be conscious of that. So I'm not going to read everything that's here. On May 11, 2020, Sheriff's Office Detective Burgess conducted a phone interview with Sheila Oliver, Suzanne's best friend, who lives in Indiana. Sheila had constant communication with Suzanne via text messages and Snapchat messages until Saturday, May 9, 2020. Sheila said that Suzanne promptly checked her Snapchat messages, and Sheila was worried that Suzanne did not read three Snapchat messages from her on May 9, 2020 at 6:40 p.m. and 6:48 p.m. MDT. Now, earlier I said I don't think that Suzanne was alive on Saturday and that we need to establish time of death. I think the fact that she didn't respond to Snapchat messages at 6:40 p.m. suggests that by the evening she was already deceased. I'm saying it's possible, and it seems to show this. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen. When we have more information, we'll know. I'm just saying it's a very important question to decide what was the time of death and to try and be accurate within half an hour to an hour. It's quite important. And so it does look like what I said earlier, that it was sort of between 5 and 6 might be in the ballpark, right? Suzanne had been very excited about the wedding of Sheila's daughter on May 10th. So it just happened that Sheila's daughter was going to get married on Mother's Day, and Suzanne was excited about it, and suddenly Suzanne goes silent. Would Barry have known about that? Probably not. Suzanne was also helping Sheila prepare for this wedding, and she was going to watch it online. And so for it to suddenly not be around on that day was pretty strange, and it turned out it was strange. Then Sheila provided text with Suzanne with the following. So I'm not really going to go through this because I did deal with it in the text episodes. I'll just quickly just touch on certain things that Suzanne says. She says something about a stressful marriage, a very tough talk yesterday. There's tension here. Then she also said, this is what Suzanne says, he thinks I'm holding on till after someone graduates. He thinks I'm not strong enough to do it given the finances. Suzanne also says something about a restraining order. Suzanne says Jekyll and Hyde again. He threatens to come home and pack. That's from Suzanne. He won't speak of divorce, begging for another chance, and then that's sort of where it ends. It's not really that long. But, you know, the point is that a lot of this is what Suzanne says, not what Sheila says. Suzanne is saying this. Then there's a paragraph that I'm not going to read, but basically that Sheila told the detective something, and it was actually Sheila who purchased the spy pen for Suzanne and gave it to her in January 2020 when she met up with Suzanne in Florida. So Sheila gave the spy pen to Suzanne in January 2020, and she basically, Suzanne had basically 4 months in which to make use of it. Wow, so we almost at 2 hours. Let's just look at some of your comments. Stephanie says communication abruptly stopped with Sheila. Okay. This device was designed, this is what it says in the affidavit, this device was designed to record conversations covertly, and that is exactly what Suzanne did. Then it says the downloaded audio files of the spy pen conversations will be summarized in section 4. So just think about this. There are audio conversations that the authorities have of Barry and Suzanne talking / arguing / whatever. And it includes recordings of Barry listening to true crime podcasts, including of murders and disappearances and involving bicycles and so on. After I read this, so when I was reviewing this, I was looking for section 4. I went straight to kind of find the downloaded audio files of the spy pen conversation. Anyway, we're going to get to that as we go through this series. So anyway, it goes on to say, Sheila told FBI agents in 2021 that Barry called her in the summer of 2019 when Suzanne was in Michigan, asking why Suzanne was not returning his calls. And then she says other things that I'm not going to repeat here. Okay, I'm not going to repeat that. If you want to go and read it, it's on page 11 of 129 in the affidavit. I can see why the defense would feel uncomfortable with that being discussed. How do you prove that? Okay, so now we go to the Melinda Bormonk interview. This is the bottom of page 11. Melinda Bormonk was interviewed by FBI Special Agent Richard Tipton on May 19th, 2020, so 9 days after the incident, at the FBI office in Knoxville, Tennessee. I think this is actually spelled wrong. Bormonk, isn't it? Borman. Anyway, let's just call her Melinda. Melinda is the sister of Suzanne and last talked to her on Friday, May 8th, via text message. Melinda sent a text message on Mother's Day, May 10, 2020, and received no response. For the previous 6 months, Suzanne had texted Melinda and told her that things were, quote unquote, getting tense between her and her husband, Barry. Christine, are you on Patreon? Because I'm reading this from Patreon. I guess I can put the link to this. I mean, I know you are on Patreon, so I can just put this link there. Maybe I should have done this earlier so you guys can follow with me. Anyway, here we go. Okay, I hope that helps you. Just to remind you, I'm now on the bottom of page 11 of 129. So if you imagine, so a lot of people think that the prosecution are toothless, they don't have a case, their hands are tied kind of thing. And, you know, the critical witness is Sheila, and Sheila's testimony is not going to be allowed. Well, there are quite a few other witnesses as well. One of them is Melinda. And so you've got another person saying that Suzanne had said, this is besides what Suzanne said herself, said in messages, but she says that Melinda told, Suzanne told Melinda that things were getting tense for the previous 6 months between her and her husband, Barry, right? We know that those were almost verbatim the words used in the Gabby Petito case, saying that I think Gabby's mother said something like tensions were escalating. And that's kind of almost a euphemism for what was actually taking place, given what actually happened. Anyway, Melinda advised that Suzanne told her that she had come to realize what a narcissist her husband Barry was. Now, that's also a word that comes across in the texts. So I remember seeing Suzanne saying something about that in one of her texts. So the fact that Melinda mentions this, I don't know whether Melinda still kept a lot of those texts. I know that she deleted, I think, the last text, unfortunately, and which is a very long text, but it matches what we know. So it seems to be verifiable, but of course it's important to absolutely be able to show that assertions that are made aren't hearsay. Here's the text where he said that. Anyway, Melinda said something about Suzanne realizing that Barry was a narcissist, and she had come to terms with his narcissistic ways, which sounds like she decided, I've recognized it, I've realized it, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I'm not going to stay with this person anymore. Anyway, in other words, she wasn't in denial. She wasn't still figuring things out. She'd reached a point of realization, and now she was going to kind of act on that. And now you have Melinda describing Barry as, Melinda says Barry lived a double life. I feel a bit uncomfortable saying all of these things that she said. Anyway, I think you guys can read it on page 11, just referring to him in different ways. But one of the things I think you could say is that she said he seems to want to have control and, quote, fools people a lot, loves money, treats his wife and daughters as trophies. So this is in the affidavit, apparently what Melinda thought of her brother-in-law, not particularly flattering. There's also a belief, it appears, that Melinda also thought that Barry wasn't faithful. I don't know how she would know that. I don't know whether she thought that because of what Suzanne said, but that also needs to be determined. Also, the affidavit takes you to a point where it suggests that Barry had a girlfriend, but it's not a smoking gun. So that's something that seems to be a possibility, but the question is, will the jury believe it, and was it true? And that's something that is how the affidavit actually concludes. Teresa Fountain, welcome. I actually thought you were a member all along. Did you leave us and come back? But anyway, it's good to have you here. I just feel like I've seen your name here before. Anyway, welcome. Melinda said that her sister was a codependent person and was very dependent on her husband, Barry. Again, this brings us into the psychology of Gabby Petito and Brian, and how being codependent can get you into a world of trouble when things are falling apart. When things are falling apart and you're codependent, you may not know to leave. You may not know that things are past a minimum safe point, if that makes sense. Jean says, was Melinda in Indiana with them? If they found an old mistress in the town, they moved from it. If they found an old mistress in the town, they moved from it. If they found an old mistress in the town they moved from, it would be great evidence. That's also quite interesting, is that Barry, I think, claims that Suzanne wanted to leave Indiana. I think that's his story, that it was Suzanne's idea to go to Colorado. My impression is that it was actually Barry's idea to go. In terms of, was Melinda in Indiana with them? Obviously at some point, because they were brother and sister. I'm not sure at what point she wasn't. Okay, so let's go a bit further. So quite a lot of interesting information from Melinda. I wish I could read it all, but I just feel like you've got to be a bit careful, even though this is from the affidavit. Melinda thought it was unusual. So she also says they lived a phony life and would often put up a front as if they were happy together. Once again, it seems almost like, what is a recipe for disaster? What is a recipe for a true crime episode? Well, one of the first things you want is live a phony life and often put up a front that you're happy. There you go. You see that with Chris Watts and Shanann. You see that with Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. You see it with the Barry Morphew case. Melinda thought that it was unusual for someone and someone, I think this is a reference to the daughters, to take a road trip on Mother's Day weekend, especially with the coronavirus pandemic. Melinda advised that she received a phone call from her father, who lives in Michigan, on May 11th, that was the Monday, to tell Melinda that Suzanne was missing. So that's how Melinda found out Suzanne was missing. From her father, not from Barry. And one also would want to know, how did her father find out? Does anyone know? So now we go to it says here, on November 20, 2020, so this is several months later, Special Agent Grusing spoke with Melinda about the message Suzanne sent to her on Friday, May 8th, 2020 at 9:28 a.m. Now, I don't know, it's quite a long time has passed to be talking about this particular piece of evidence. Anyway, I just want to refer to footnote 17. What does that refer to? Not quite sure where it is. So footnote 17 refers to a text where Suzanne says he won't speak of divorce, begging for another chance. Footnote 17, on the 22nd of April 2021, FBI agents informed Barry of this message. On the 25th of March, that Suzanne discussed divorce with him. Barry said he didn't recall that discussion. And so what this kind of suggests to me, and I could be wrong, I'm just putting things together and maybe I'm reaching the wrong conclusion, but if I understand it correctly, Barry said something along the lines, let me rather put this as a question. Didn't Barry say to the authorities, we had the perfect marriage, we weren't talking about divorce? Didn't Barry say to authorities, there's nothing wrong with our marriage, or, no, divorce never came up? Question, isn't that what Barry said? Then the authorities find this text where Suzanne is telling telling Sheila, he won't speak about divorce. So Suzanne obviously wants to get divorced. It's a little bit like an inversion of Chris Watts and Shanann. Chris Watts wants to get divorced, doesn't want the baby, thinks they're incompatible, and Shanann doesn't want to talk about divorce. She wants to talk about patching up the marriage. It's kind of like a similar situation. And then who's going to get control over things at the end of the day? And so they confront Barry with this text, and Barry says, I don't actually remember that. In other words, he's saying that by saying he doesn't remember that, it's possible that what Suzanne is saying either isn't true or it needs to be proved that it's true. But why would she lie to her sister? I suppose you could argue that because she's having an affair, she's blaming Barry. I suppose the defense could say there was nothing wrong with the marriage with Barry. The villain in the story is Suzanne, and so she's blah, 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 if you know what I'm saying. Then this was the text message sent on May 8th, 2020 at 9:28 a.m. So basically a day and a half, I think, before her death. Basically a day before her death, Suzanne sends this message to her sister. Quote, it's hard dealing with the harsh abrasiveness and having to show respect. So she's describing Barry as harsh and abrasive. Remember, Chris Watts was described as standoffish. Can you say that it's the same thing? She also says he's been, I'll spell the word, I'm not going to say it. He's been abusive, emotionally and physically. There's so much, ... I went through a period of acceptance and I feel more angry now. Anger at what I've allowed. So Suzanne herself is blaming herself. What's the word? She's sort of bitter. She's bitterly disappointed in herself for allowing herself to be treated in a bad way for so long, right? Christine says it's the Watts case all over again. It certainly feels like that, doesn't it? Yeah, I feel the same way, Bria. Feel the same way. Okay, so So obviously by May 8th, this is the critical part to remember here. By May 8th, the key emotion that Suzanne is sharing with her sister is anger. She's saying she's actually feeling angry with herself for how much she's put up with. She says the word anger twice. She talks about other words like respect, harsh abrasiveness. She says she went through a period of acceptance, and you kind of get the feeling that she's now moved beyond that period. She's not accepting it anymore. She's not putting up with it anymore. She's angry now. And someone said that Barry must have seen a text from Jeff and reacted. I think it's more like Suzanne is now kind of standing up for herself, just like Chris Watts was sort of standing up for himself. And that is now leading to a dynamic of confrontation between the couple, where one dominant partner is used to getting their way, but now the passive partner is standing up for themselves. This is now leading to conflict and confrontation and this wrestling for control. And one person suspects they're going to lose this control unless they cheat. One person is anticipating that unless they take matters into their own hands, they are going to lose this contest, if that makes sense. Melinda told Special Agent Grussing that she did not have context for why Suzanne texted on May 8th. Quite interesting. She just didn't give any context for that text. She said she had not discussed those things with Suzanne, or surprised to see her text that. And this, I think, is a bit of an acknowledgement that Suzanne and Melinda weren't really that close. And I think the fact that Melinda deleted that text also shows that kind of that she wasn't used to what her sister was sending, and or maybe that she wasn't the right person to send certain information. Yeah. When Melinda found out on May 11th that Suzanne was missing, she said, damn it, damn it, damn it, to herself, because she was certain that Barry had done something. So that was her reaction. Resentful, yeah. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Jean. May 8th, 2020. I'm not sure about that. I know Barry said he went on a volunteer firefighter course, but I think that was supposed to be on Mother's Day. I think that was an early version of events. Okay, so let's go on. Melinda described years of Suzanne being a submissive housewife to Barry in Indiana, allowing him to control their finances, and Suzanne's longtime suspicions about Barry having affairs. So yeah, you have it kind of in black and white that Suzanne had suspected for a long time that Barry was having affairs, plural. And Barry, if this is true, then if you take kind of male psychology, you might think that a man who has a very submissive wife may think that he can have his cake and eat it. He can have an affair, and his wife, who's passive and submissive and codependent, won't have the chutzpah to sort of stand up for herself and leave the relationship. She'll just sort of take what she can get, kind of thing. And that is something that I think it'll be interesting to see if the prosecution can make their case for this, Barry's quote-unquote affairs. in court. If you think about it just literally, if Barry has had multiple affairs, where are the women who had affairs with him? And what I mean is, so a woman has gone missing, a woman has possibly been murdered, and the prime suspect possibly had affairs with lots of other women, not just one or two. Where are those women? Why are they not saying anything? Are they not going to say anything? Or they're just not going to say anything? In the Patrick Frazee case, his mistress came forward and changed the entire case. Is that going to happen in this case? I don't think it's anywhere near the same, but nevertheless, you should have someone standing up for Suzanne. So if any of you are listening to this, I hope you're feeling a knocking on the door of your conscience. Are you going to answer that knocking? Melinda said that Suzanne loved Barry and wanted to be a good wife and mother to her two girls. Melinda thought the primary reason for the move to Colorado was Barry's long-term desire to move there for hunting. So that is Melinda's belief, her understanding. You would think that Melinda would know whether Barry wanted to move there or his sister wanted to move there. You think that wouldn't be like, we're moving to Colorado. Oh, why are you moving to Colorado? Well, because Barry wants to go and hunt there. Oh, not because Suzanne wants to go there, kind of thing. Anyway, so apparently Barry wanted to go there. I must say I'm not completely clear on why they did move there. Was it because someone was having an affair and they wanted to go somewhere else so that could be broken up? Or was it, my impression is that Suzanne was very happy in Indiana. She knew a lot of people and she, so my impression was that she was quite happy in Indiana. Also that she was sort of struggling with her cancer and Barry's kind of wanted to move. You would think that you need to sort of, how can I put it? You need to be with family and around a support system when you have those difficult things to overcome. So we're almost at the end. Melinda thought Suzanne threw caution to the wind and moved in an attempt to save their marriage and start over. I think that's such a useful and powerful and meaningful statement. It seems just like using any words, but I think Suzanne also threw caution to the wind when she had her affair with Jeff Libler. And, you might say it's shocking, absolutely shocking that this woman would betray her family by doing that, but within the context that she realized or understood or felt that her marriage was a sham, it was in a way an authentic thing to do, although Jeff Libler, having a family of his own, maybe you can't really apply authenticity in that respect. I just mean that staying in a marriage that is a sham or a con isn't authentic. Doing anything to kind of get out of it is the beginning of reclaiming your life, reclaiming your identity, finding your way back to authenticity. So I think she threw caution to the wind moving to Colorado, and then in May and kind of just before May was also throwing caution to the wind. And doing that was risky. Moving to Colorado away from her family, away from people that knew her, was actually a risk to Suzanne, just as Shanann moving to Colorado was also, she didn't know it, a risk to her, being away from everyone that she knew. then it ends off, Melinda provided documentations that Suzanne inherited about $208,000 from their mother, Adrian, right? $208,000 from their mother, who passed away in 2013. Now, bear in mind, Suzanne inherits this money, and then a couple of years later, literally, is it 5 years later, they then move to Colorado, where they start over, but Barry wants to live in a bigger house, and they're living a certain way. Well, who's really enjoying the most of the fruits of that inheritance while Suzanne has cancer? Then she also inherited about $217,000 when her grandmother-in-law, Helen Burnett, passed away. That was in 2016. So she gets these windfalls of money. Together it's about, $430,000, almost $500,000 she inherits. And not long after that, Barry says, hey, let's go somewhere else. Let's go to Colorado. And then does Barry ask for any of the money? Does Barry need some of the money? Does Barry loan some of the money? Timmy, come. Timmy, come. People want to see you. Come, boy. Come. Come, boy. You need to be part of the sign-off, so you can't leave now. Come. So you have a money narrative here as well of $500,000, and it's also at a very important time. The times of these inheritances is quite important. You also had Lacey Peterson inheriting, I think it was $150,000 from her grandmother. I'm not sure how much of that was in jewelry, but it was something like that. You had inheritance being part of the fabric in the Patrick Frazee case, where Patrick Frazee's father, I think his father died, and so I think he needed custody of his child. And there may have been, anyway, but the fact is, with a lot of these cases, you kind of got to ask how much of the motive is sex. And I think in the Chris Watts case, in the Patrick Frazee case, in the Scott Peterson case, it is quite a big factor, but it's not the only factor. The other side of that is how much of the motive is money. And I don't think that is a small factor either. Because in a weird way, if you take away the money, you're gonna lose the sex as well. You're gonna lose the ability to sort of play the game. You're gonna lose a certain status. You're gonna lose a certain lifestyle. So in order to keep your sort of keep the party going, you need the resources to keep doing that. And if you're going to lose your partner, so in a marriage scenario, the moment you lose your partner, the one with the resources, those resources, at the moment that there's a divorce, the direction that those resources go to is away from you. In other words, you lose that. And so how do you change the direction? You lose your partner, but you don't lose those resources. How do you flick the switch? What do you think the answer is to that? Christine says money is the root of all evil today, from Pink Floyd. I must say I've been quite impressed by how many people have been watching this. Around about 200 people, and it's been good to have our members participating. So I will be doing this again next week. We'll continue another approximately 6 pages, and we'll keep doing that until we get to the trial in April. So every Tuesday, make sure you're at this space. bear in mind, because the around about 35 members, I can kind of respond to you guys while it's a relatively small number. So that's quite a nice thing about joining when there are few members is, you can make your presence felt, kind of thing. Bria says TCRS is at almost 100,000 subscribers. No. I'm at almost 86,000. I'm still some way to go. Christine says, nice with member chats. Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to review one or two things. I don't want to go more than 2.5 hours. In this episode, we asked two main questions. The one question was, do you think that whoever planted the bicycle planted the helmet at the same time, right? And most of you, I think all of you said no. Thanks, Bria. Most of you said no, it was done on a different day, and I also thought that. Have you changed your mind on that score? I'll tell you, I have. I believe that the helmet was planted at the same time that the bicycle was planted, right? So that's the one question we addressed. Some of you may think, no, I think the helmet was put at a different time. I'm just saying that's a question we asked. I think we sort of addressed it. The second question that was asked was, did the cadaver dogs alert anywhere? And we're still going to deal with that. I know what the answer is to that, but I'm not going to give that away just yet, but it is pretty interesting. And I think, just to give you a little hint, most of you, I think, are not on the right track with that particular question or I guess, answer. And then the third thing that I think the biggest thing I thought I found out in this particular discussion was that Suzanne didn't have a bottle on her mountain bike, which shows convincingly that she didn't go riding. The whole mountain bike thing is staged. And I think if you can, it's almost like the John Benet Ramsey case, if you can clearly show that the ransom note is fake, is staged, then almost everything else falls into place. So you don't have to work so hard to prove things. Once you show that there's staging, that there's contrivance, then you automatically lose trust, lose faith in some of these characters that you're dealing with. It's showing deceit, it's showing deception, right? So the ransom note in the Ramsey case, some people are idiotic enough to actually believe it was written by an intruder. But anyway, if you reach the point where you say, okay, it was written by a particular person, then you have now reached the point where everything else falls into place after that, starts falling into place. In this case, if you say the bike was staged and the helmet, then you are setting the stage for everything else. You're already saying, it looks like this person is guilty of stagecraft, who is contrived and cunning and presents a double reality kind of thing. And the question is, does the crime scene, if that is true, match the person and the personality? And again, if these people who had affairs, if they did have affairs, come forward, that would provide some reinforcement to that. Where are they? If they're out there, where are they? Teresa said they moved fast, sold about everything, packed like Beverly Hillbillies. Have you seen the pictures of the truck packed? Not a moving company, the truck packed like a fast move. Great point. Terry says, I did that exact thing in Alaska for 10 years. Not quite sure what you mean. Moving or surviving? Call of the Wild. Bria says it would make the most sense if he did dump it at the same time, but Barry made so many other stops and dumps. At this point, we don't know who dumped the bicycle, but who, if it wasn't Barry, who was it? Who would have access to the garage? And I think Barry did say something about, was there a sign of a break-in, implying that someone come to the house when he wasn't there? Terry says, I still have the dream of the little cabin in the woods. Okay. Okay, guys, we're at 2 hours, 30 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed this coverage. I hope you've enjoyed this collared shirt. This is the first time done a live in a collared shirt, for what it's worth. I actually wore this, a mountain lion. Okay. Something I forgot to sort of mention. I hope you guys had a good Valentine's Day. Did you guys have a good 14th of February? Stephanie, what did you do? Stephanie, did you go out? Did you have a family dinner? Thanks a lot, Sharon. Thanks for being here. Bria, did you do something? Did you go out with your family, or did you have a little meal somewhere? Thanks, Christine. Thanks a lot for that. Stephanie left. Where did Stephanie go? Well, this was, I guess, quite a long discussion. But Bria's still here. Bria, what did you do on Valentine's Day? Sharon, what did you do? Stephanie had to go. Okay. Okay. Sharon says, gourmet meal with my family. How was yours? Mine was actually pretty good. Also went out with someone and another couple. What was quite funny was my girlfriend gave me like a package with a balloon in it. Like there was like chocolates and a gift inside the package. And then, so when I picked her up, I put it in the sort of rear of my vehicle. And while I was driving, you had this balloon sort of in the rear of the vehicle. And it felt a lot like It, the clown thing, with this balloon in the back. So it was this weird thing of, you given this gift out of sort of fondness and kindness and love, but there's this feeling of terror and you know what I mean, like this feeling of anxiety a little bit. You're driving and this balloon is sort of behind you, and I don't know, I guess because I'm I won't say true crime obsessed, but very involved with true crime, you often see the dark side of things. So I see this balloon in the back of my vehicle in the rearview mirror. And I still say to her, I feel like the clown is behind us kind of thing. So it was pretty freaky. Yeah, and so we ate at a restaurant that my father actually owns the building, and the people rent from it. It used to actually be my grandmother's house, and so it's kind of weird eating at a restaurant where you used to sort of watch television or, you know, hang out with your grandmother drinking tea or eat. I know she liked giving us sweets and things, you know, so it's weird, like suddenly this place that used to be a home, you know, place with a lounge and a bedroom and so on, is now filled with kind of strange people. It's kind of cool and also kind of weird kind of thing. It's not Lacoste, it's Old Khaki. I don't know if it's a South African brand, but anyway. Okay, so Timmy is like out for the count on my arm here. I think I can maybe just pick up my arm. Timmy, can you wake up? It's kind of like Timmy's bedtime. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. But like Stephanie, I think I need to go. Timmy also needs to get some sleep. Hey, Timmy, do you want to sleep? Timmy's very tired, shame. Christine says, my husband bought me flowers. He's my rock. I've been quite ill again. Sorry to hear that. But he's still by my side. That's good to hear. It's good to hear that there's someone there to take care of you. Robbie says, it is terrifying. It is. It is. Definitely is. Okay. You can see Timmy's actually got his eyes open. So he's just, I think, enjoying the cuddle. I think you're right, Terry. I think you're right. Okay, guys, remember tomorrow there's another live stream dealing with Vincent van Gogh. This is going to be quite a good one. If you've never watched one of them with dealing with Vincent van Gogh, you don't want to miss this one. It's got some really interesting insights that are going to change your mind about Dr. Gachet. We're going to deal with some of his reading material, and it's really pretty interesting. So I'll see you guys then. I'll see you guys tomorrow around about this time. Take care. Everyone stay beautiful and stay safe. And see you all tomorrow. Okay. Cheers, eh? Bye.